The former WBC heavyweight champion Frank Bruno appeared on a popular UK morning talk show called This Morning today in the UK, which airs on ITV. That's the channel. And he did an interview with them in which he expressed his desire to come back to boxing. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the Frank Bruno story, particularly since he retired, he's been in and out of mental institutions battling bipolar disorder, which is otherwise known as manic depression. When he retired, I believe it was about 20 years ago now, he retired with a detached retina. So, given the fact that he's been out of the ring for so long, he's old, he's been in and out of mental institutions, and he retired with a detached retina, there is absolutely no way that the British Boxing Board of Control will license him. Impossible. Won't happen. Some people are worried about it happening. It won't happen. The British board withdrew the licenses of Danny Williams and Audley Harrison in the past few years. So if they're not going to license guys like that, then there is absolutely no way they're going to license Frank Bruno. Bruno is still a popular public figure in the United Kingdom, not as popular as he used to be, but still popular. Them licensing him would be a national scandal. So that definitely won't happen. Some people might say, well, there's a possibility that he'll go to a different country and get licensed. I don't know. Given his history of mental illness, there may be restrictions on him traveling. He might not be able to travel unsupervised. I don't know. But I'd be surprised if he gets a license anywhere, to be honest with you. I think the British board or maybe even the British government might intervene if there was a situation where he was in a different country getting licensed. You know, it's possible. So, yeah, that's not going to happen. But the interview itself was pretty disturbing. Bruno looked unhinged, to be honest. He may have been saying some valid things in there. Look, I've never been mentally ill. I've never been on antidepressant or any type of, you know, mind-altering medication. But I know people who have, and my impression has always been that the medication can often be dangerous and harmful. And that was what Frank Bruno was saying in this interview, that the medication actually makes you worse, this, that, and the other. And as I say, people who I've known who have been mentally ill, they say the same things. Now, some people are going to turn around and say, well, look, they're mentally ill, so they would say that. Well, I don't know, man. I feel like there is a nugget of truth to what Frank Bruno was saying about the mental institutions and the drugs they put people on and all that type of stuff. And he had some pretty harsh criticism for David Cameron. And believe you me, I got more than harsh criticism for David Cameron. But yeah, besides the fact that he did make, I think, some valid points, just looking at the guy's demeanor, he's clearly unhinged. He's clearly unwell mentally. And the presenters seemed on edge to me. They looked as though, wow, this guy could flip out at any moment. And they were trying to, you know, they were treading on eggshells and trying to be very careful about the way they handled the interview to not get him upset, because this is a guy who has been sectioned before. You know, the police and the men in white coats have come to get this guy before when he's had one of his turns. So that is what that is. But his mental health aside, although this may be a symptom of it, I don't know. But just putting his mental health aside for a second. Actually, before I get to that, in the same interview, Frank Bruno said he wants to come back to boxing, and he basically said he wants to fight Anthony Joshua. He took offense to this idea that I think Eddie Hearn might have said that Joshua would have knocked out Bruno in 3 rounds or whatever it was, or maybe Barry Hearn said it, I don't know. But anyway, even during Frank Bruno's career, there was a pattern which I noticed with him. Because Bruno was, as I say, extremely popular when he was fighting in the UK. He was really the successor to Henry Cooper in terms of the popularity that he had. He was the nation's favorite fighter for a very long time, Frank Bruno. But I noticed something when Lennox Lewis came along. Lennox Lewis, Frank Bruno actually retired. I can't remember if Bruno retired after Lewis had turned professional or before Lewis turned professional. But either way, Bruno retired, and I believe that was in the late 80s, early 90s, he retired. And Lennox Lewis came along, and he started getting the attention of the British public. And it got to a point where Frank Bruno seemed like he was getting jealous. He felt like Lewis was impinging on his territory. Bruno got very territorial. He didn't like it. Then he announced he was coming back to boxing, and he wanted to fight Lennox Lewis. So, you know, he did, and he fought Lewis. He lost, etc., etc. Then Herbie Hyde came along, and he was also getting a bit of attention from the British public. He started challenging Herbie Hyde. Then Frank Bruno retired following his loss to Mike Tyson. That was his, final fight. But when Audley Harrison came along after the Olympics in 2000, was it 2001, 2000, the Olympics in Sydney? Can't remember now. When Audley Harrison came along, he started getting the attention of the British public. He was the biggest fighter, or biggest heavyweight fighter in terms of popularity in the UK at the time when he turned professional and he was fighting on the BBC. And then all of a sudden, Frank Bruno said he wanted to come out of retirement and fight Audley Harrison. Okay, you're noticing a pattern now? Then Audley Harrison's career nosedived, and David Haye came on the scene and replaced him as the #1 British heavyweight. And Frank Bruno started making disparaging remarks about David Haye. I remember it very clearly. And in fact, going into the David Haye-Audley Harrison fight, obviously by then Audley Harrison's career was on a serious decline. Frank Bruno was backing Audley Harrison against David Haye. And it's not like he just thought Audley Harrison was going to win. You could see in the interviews, Bruno wanted Audley Harrison to knock David Haye out. Because I'm telling you, he was jealous of the attention that David Haye was getting from the British public. Anyway, that all went by the wayside. Haye had his issues, which are well documented. You know the situation. And now we have Anthony Joshua, who has risen up as the most popular British heavyweight. And once again, Frank Bruno comes out and says that he wants to fight Anthony Joshua. Okay, Frank Bruno is very, very territorial. He feels that that #1 position in British heavyweight boxing is his and nobody else should have it. And I think he might have even challenged Tyson Fury, or said he wanted to fight Tyson Fury previously. Correct me if I'm wrong, but whatever the case may be, this is how Bruno behaves. He's got a history of behavior like this. It is what it is. I don't know if that's tied to his mental illness or what, because he was doing this even when he was still fighting. Like I say, he's never going to get licensed. I hope that when his license gets refused, when his application to have a license in the UK gets refused, it don't push him over the edge again. I don't know where this situation with Frank Bruno is going to end, because as recently as last year, he was in a mental hospital. And as I say, in that interview, the stuff he was saying and his demeanor and everything didn't seem good. And in fact, in the interview, he said that he has to come back to boxing basically for his own sanity. He thinks that boxing is going to keep him sane. I don't think that getting punched upside the head is going to keep him sane. I think that might push him over the edge as well. So I don't know. It's a sad story with Frank Bruno, but there are people like him all over the world, all over the country in the UK. So, it's not like he's an exceptional case, but he is a public figure. So, people are discussing it. Let me know what you think about Frank Bruno's situation. It is very sad. What do you think they should do with him? Maybe he's going to get sectioned again sometime soon. I don't know. And yeah, just let me know what you feel about everything I've raised in this video. It's your boy Hatman, I'm out.